Welcome to Inside Builder channel. Solopreneur's secret weapon. Building your company with Agentic IDE. In this part 4 of multi-part series, we are going to look on how to deploy your own website. We have been discussing the 10 steps to develop your own website using Agentic IDEs. I have added one more additional step for deploying the web server to the public servers. This step is very crucial, and it is actually so crucial that I decided to create a video ahead of time. We had been discussing the first 5 steps on up to how to learn HTMX on project itself. You can learn any of the technology as you build using Agentic IDEs. We have been discussing how to do that. When it comes to increasing the complexity in the manageable steps, I have created a separate video on my YouTube channel that you will be able to get it easily. So let me show you the video. The idea here is that the more you try and practice with this Agentic IDE, the faster you will be able to get the things done. This Python bootcamp demo with Agentic IDE provides the steps that you can use for manageably increasing the complexity of your server. Let us go back. In this discussion, what we are going to do is we are going to discuss about the ways to deploy a website or a web server. We will dive into the steps for deployment, why the terminal skills matter, meaning why you should be comfortable using the terminal, the why and how part of Docker image, and finally the easiest part of automating the deployment with Railway. I can simply go to this step right now and I can show how this automation works, how the deployment works. But understanding 1, 2, and 3 is very critical, because you need not actually follow these steps in real, but you should know what a developer or what the Agentic IDE will do in order for getting the deployment done. So this understanding of the steps is very crucial. Computer science is more about the recipe. At the end of the day, the output that is going to come is always depends on the recipe or the code, right, or the steps that you take. So that is the reason why I'm sharing these steps, so that once you start doing the things by yourself, you will be able to visualize how the things has to be, so that you can accordingly manage. Let's start with step 4. I will show you the most easiest way to do a deployment. I'm going to bypass a lot of things right now, and I'm going to go to this step. Ways to deploy a 1 minute. Prepare for Railway deploy. After you have pushed the code to Git repo, you need to create a Git app in Railway, create a project, create a service, and upload the code, test the deployment. Yep, all of these things are automated pretty well in Railway. I'm skipping the entire sign-in process, the creating of the project, etc. There are lots of videos out there discussing these things. I'm just going to show you the step where you are going to add a service. You are going to select the Git repo. You might have to configure the GitHub app. In my case, I've already done that, and I have my code, the server code, in Solopreneur GitHub repo. So let me click that, and it will start deploying. You have to just click on deploy and it will start working. That's it. Your deployment will be ready and you will be able to look at the website like this. So you see, I am able to see this solopreneur production.up.railway.app. This is the domain that has been given to me from railway.app, and this same link can be used for everybody to access this website. This was completely created with help of Agentic IDE. Right. So if I go back here, it is building the website. It will take some more time. It will build the image and do all the stuff. In the meantime, just be aware that you have to have a generate domain here, so you can generate the domain and you can use 5,000 here to generate the domain. It will generate it and keep it ready for you. So this one is something that you have to create it, or else you can see that it is creating another domain for me, the same name, like Solopreneur production, right? This name is coming from the GitHub repo. So if I go to the GitHub repo, if I click on this, it will go to the GitHub repo. You can look at my code here. One thing I want to highlight here is this proc file. This proc file contains the step, this code that you are executing here, this command is required for the proper deployment of this application. So this deployment is completed, and if I open this, it will open the website like this. Let me try that. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes, so give it a moment. If it creates an error, just try it after some time. You can see that it is up and running. Now you can see that the deployment number is 3E78. The same website has been deployed, and here you can see that there is no 3E78. So these are two different websites. Okay, deployment can be really easy. Okay, well, as I told, you can stop watching this video. Now you know how to deploy your server. Go ahead and skip the rest of the video. Feel free to do that. Let me continue on the rest of the steps. Steps for deployment. What actually happens in the backend when I deployed the website? Once you complete the server coding, meaning writing the code for the server, you have to rent a server online. This has to be done manually. Before 1 or 2 years, I did this manually, but nowadays it's not required. You have to rent a server online. You have to move the code to the rented server, meaning you have to copy and paste the code that you have on your local machine. The code that is here, that is on your local machine, you need to paste it to the rented server. It should be in their file system. You need to install the prerequisites like the Python, working on Git. You need to install the packages that is required for bringing up the server, and then you need to run the server on this particular IP. 0.0.0.0 is the global IP for the mission, for the entire mission, or for the entire server, meaning irrespective of the public IP or the private IP that is assigned to that mission, that server will be available. So this is the concept of having this 0.0.0.0. You don't need to be really concerned about the technical background of it. You just need to remember this. You need to use this IP 0.0.0.0. 5000 is the port, and then you need to expose the port of the server. There will be a GUI provided to you, or there will be a documentation for that any of the remote server that you're renting on exposing this port. You don't need to worry about that in the past. But all of these things require a couple of additional knowledge that we will discuss one by one. But after you do all these things, once the server is running, you need to buy a domain name for the server. In my case, I am developing a solopreneur website, meaning I need to have a domain name which talks about solopreneurship, and it will have a .com, .app, .in kind of a domain. This is something that I need to purchase. As of now, Railway app has given me a common domain name. This is not purchased by me, but this has been provided to me for free by Railway app. Then I need to inform the DNS about the domain, the DNS server, that the particular domain name is mapped to the public IP. So if you go back and if you go here, you can see this public networking part. So here the actual DNS updation is happening. The actual public IP of this server will be in number, but that number 10.25.35.60, it could be any kind of these numbers, that number will be mapped to this name. That process of mapping is done by the DNS server. That's all you need to know. Fine. You have that mapping done, and after that you can test the connection by connecting to the domain name, like how we did here. Like I came to this, opened the browser. Let me actually do that again. Let me copy this. Let me open an incognito window. and let me paste this, and you can see that it will take a second because it's running on free application, free server inside railway app, so it will take a little bit of a latency, and you can see the server is up and running. So this is the entire process of the deployment that you have to understand. There are two ways this step 3 to 6 can be done. So one is you can actually use the GitHub route where your code, the code that you completed, is moved to the GitHub repo, and then from the GitHub repo, you move the code to the rented server and do the rest of the process manually. Okay. This has its own benefit. So keep this in mind. So I can move this to GitHub repo and do all the 3 to 6 separately. Another route is that I can completely automate 3 to 6 using Docker. Meaning the code is packaged, the installation of the prerequisites is also packaged, the exposing of the port server and running of the code on the server is also available with the Docker. All these things are packaged into a single application, and that is the purpose of Docker. You don't need to dive into the technical process of how Docker achieves this. You need to only understand the steps to create such a Docker image. All these steps 3 to 6 is packaged into something called as a Docker image, and in order to do this packaging, there is a file called as Docker file that you need to configure, and it will be done. You don't need to be worried at all. It will be done automatically. On top of this, in order to create this Docker file, you can always use cursor. You can come to cursor and you can say for the app.py, create the Docker file, and it will create the Docker file for us. If you go back to the GitHub repo, let me close this incognito window. If you go back to the GitHub repo, and if you look at my other cursor projects, let me show you the Docker file so that you guys can understand what I'm talking about. If you go to HTML Flask study, and there I have a Docker file underscore bypass. So this file is the Docker file, and this was again written using cursor. So you don't need to write any of these things, and you can see at the bottom there is a command that runs. These commands can be automated, and it can be kept inside the Docker image itself. Let us go back. I spoke to you about two ways of deployment, right? One is through GitHub repo, and another is through Docker image. And there is a third way. The third way is that you don't have Docker image or GitHub repo. You are going to manually copy and paste the code to the server using SSH or some other means like SCP processes. But those are all outdated steps. These days you don't use these kinds of steps anyway. So keep this in mind. It's better to always have a GitHub repo and then push the code to the repo and then take the code from there and update it in the remote server or use Docker image. One of the benefits of Docker image is you can push the Docker image to the Docker hub. Like GitHub, there is Docker hub also. You can push the image that you create locally on your machine to this Docker hub, and you can pull it from anywhere. So if I click on this task manager, the link of this image will be shared with you guys. This task manager is the server that you are seeing here. So if you pull this image using this, excuse me. So let me click on the public view. This is my personal view. So if you use this message, Docker pull solverbot task manager to in your local machine, and then if you run this Docker image, then you will be able to get a similar kind of a server running on your local machine. That is the benefit of Docker hub. Same way, if you do the same command on the remote server and then you run the Docker image, then from the remote server you will be able to get the server like this. As you are seeing right now, there is a lot of easier way of deployment. A lot of technology right now has been completely abstracted. You see, there are almost 9 steps, but all these 9 steps is completely taken away by using this railway 6 steps, and all the 6 steps I had to just click. I did not need to give any kind of command, right? But one of the main challenges is that you might actually use railway app to deploy in the beginning, and you can use your ask your customers also to deploy in the railway app. In case in the future, if you are going to shift to a different server, or if your customer wants to actually host the code on their local machine, then you need to understand these steps and where to stop and which level to stop. All these things are only possible when you know what's happening at the backend, right? And also having a solution, having multiple solutions for one problem is also important. As I told, there are multiple ways. There are 2 different ways right now, actually 3 different ways. You can use GitHub, you can use Docker, you can use simple SSH and SCP to move the files to a remote server and do the operation from there. There are 3 different ways. Having multiple solutions for a single challenge that you're facing is crucial for any developer. Well, all these things brings to the next important discussion: why the terminal skills matter. The moment I speak about terminal, people actually might get apprehensive because command line and the commands that you need to use in a command line can be intimidating. One of the main reason people are afraid of command line is because of this. It's plain. There is no information as to what needs to be done. You are not told that, okay, there are this many commands that is available, try it out and solve your problem. Nothing is informed to you. Even if you type help, you get a help like this. This is actually very difficult to comprehend when someone who has never touched a command line and who has been using the computer using the GUI, this becomes overwhelming. You can bypass this overwhelming steps by actually using cursor. In fact, you can ask cursor to give you the commands that you need to execute, and cursor will be glad to help you on that point. You don't need to be worried at all. And one more important point is cursor also has a terminal, as you must have already been aware of, and there also if you type help, you will get this help. You can just create the copy selection like this, and you can add that entire selection to the chat. Once you do that, you can ask any question on this selection that you have done, and cursor will help you out with that. This is one of the main ways you can leverage Agentic IDE. There are a number of ways you can manage stuff. Okay, there is that mindset is very important when you're going to work on this deployment process. Have a mindset that terminal is very useful. Have a mindset that terminal is going to be your friend, and you need to use the terminal to make the missions work for you, because the deployment process can be a real headache. Okay, if you don't understand what's happening, if you don't understand the steps that you need to follow, if you don't understand this, if you don't follow this, then, and if you miss any of the configuration during the process, then you will face a problem. You will not get the output that you are looking for. The server that has to run in the online website. If that, you need to follow all these steps one by one. When you're trying to work with the terminal, there are lots of benefits. It enables automation. It provides access to advanced tools. It helps to work with the remote server. In case if there is a problem with the remote server that with your customer, then it is going to be you are going to troubleshoot it with the terminal only. And when you are going to do it with the help of task cursor, it will become much more easier. You can actually, okay, if I do a close folder right now, and you can connect to the remote server through SSH. So there is an option that will pop up. You can see that you can click on this, and that will open up the plugin for SSH connection. And from that SSH connection, you can connect to any of the remote server from cursor also. So you can see that it is actually asking to install this option. So click and install it. It will install the plugin necessary, and after that you will be able to use that plugin to continue to connect with the server and start working with that. So let me close this. And you can see that it is asking to add a new SSH host, and you can add your SSH host as user at host, and you need to give the username and password. If you have any questions on this, do let me know. I will make a separate video on that and I will provide you the support. Navigating files and directories becomes extremely efficient because you are doing it on the terminal. GitHub and Docker both are extensively terminal oriented. You can still use the GUI version, but once you understand the terminal power, you are never going to stop. So for an example, let me show you. So here I can now spawn the same server. So this server that you are seeing here, I will spawn it with a very simple command. This command is going to spawn the, let me do a change. I'm going to make it as YT demo 1 because the YT demo is already running. So that's why it's creating a problem. So once I spawn it, I will be able to see the demo. You can see that the same task manager server, which I have it online, is also available locally. You can see the IP address is different. This is a localhost IP address. And this was done with a simple single line command here. It's very lightweight, right? But you need to understand what this is, what are these doing, and what is the name doing here. All these parts are important. At this moment, you don't need to be really concerned about these things. You can steadily learn the technology as you progress in your business endeavor as well as in your career, because many people have this challenge because there's a lot of things to learn, but you have to learn based on why or the purpose of something. What is the purpose of something? You have to learn based on that. So now you know the purpose of GitHub, Docker Hub. What is the actual purpose of it? Then once you know the purpose, and then when you start learning, it becomes very, very easy for you. The imagination for you to take the next step to keep learning becomes very strong. I mean, think about it. Once you are comfortable with GitHub, Terminal, Docker Hub, etc., you know that you can move your code anywhere you want, and you can start, spawning up the server like how I am doing. Won't you be interested? After all, you want to have the control, right? Finally, you can use the terminal for debugging because there's a logs that always come. You can just a minute. I can show you the logs also. Anyway, I will show you the logs right now. Whenever you initiate a server, so the server logs start updating here. So if I open this window, and you can see that the server log will start updating. You can see the logs coming up here. These kinds of logs can be helpful for debugging your application. And finally, it is widely used. The terminals are basically used widely in DevOps, system administration, Kubernetes orchestration, system development, etc. It is actually a very useful tool if you are going to get a job. But in our case, you are going to be a solopreneur, and knowing this tool is going to save you a lot of time because you are not going to meddle with GUI. You are not going to get stuck in learning one particular way of doing things, and then if that thing doesn't work, you are not stuck. You know how to move to the next step. You are capable of making the things work. So that's one of the main things that the terminal will provide you. Fine. As I was discussing about the ways to deploy the website, I was talking about there are a couple of ways, right? So you can use the services like Railway app, the cloud services. You can also use your own server and put it online by using the domain name system, getting the public IP, and going through all the process. Or you can use any of these services: Python Anywhere, FreeTier, EC2 instance, Railway, as I showed you, Glitch, Render, Firebase, and other VPC hosting. GCP, Microsoft Azure, and Linode. There are many other services out there which where you can host this same server and you can bring it online. So I believe that in this video you had a very good introduction of a lot of important details about how the deployment works after you have completed working on your coding part. Coding part is only the 75% of it. The remaining 25% is mainly on the deployment. I believe that this video had shown you how you can deploy your own website. The key is to write the code and then practice deploying. So I would like to leave this video with 4 words: practice, 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 practice.